Tae-san bluntly refused the mysterious god. He sincerely rejected this, which surprised him by Tae-san's rule. He thought he was completely independent in his thinking, so he wanted to make a contract with the evil god with his karma points. He asked the god why they didn't negotiate a little, right? The god was completely confused by Tae-san's words and also agreed to make a contract with him. He boasted to Tae-san that he was from the film faction, and even the security agency of the Russian Federation had to call him the hacker boss. There was no secret organization in the world that he could not infiltrate. He even knew the activation code for nuclear weapons. He confidently said he could give Tae-san the power to dominate the virtual world. Tae-san showed a gesture of not caring much, which made the god feel very angry because he was despised. Tae-san suddenly asked him if he knew about the technique of cryptocurrency trading. He seemed very surprised by this question. Tae-san continued to ask, "What about Bitcoin?" His questions made him think that he was making up stories, because he knew nothing about what Tae-san asked. Tae-san understood everything, so he asked him to stop talking and turn on the light. This sentence really scared the god in front of him, because he always acted superior. When Tae-san found a way to turn the situation around, the god felt scared and wet his pants. His gesture made the god look like a clown, and Tae-san didn't wait for him to agree with his request. Tae-san immediately summoned a light in his palm. It was a glowing ball that the Joseph R.A. group bought to decorate. The light bulb of the evil god slowly appeared behind him as an old wall. But surprisingly, under his feet was a pair of old shoes, and the cigarette in his hand also fell to the ground. He was really shocked to see that it was not a god, but just a kid, who looked like a beggar. The scene around him was just a normal residential area. The kid's face was dirty as if he hadn't bathed for years. Tae-san thought that everything was just a joke. Tae-san approached the kid with a doubtful face and asked how old he was. The kid still insisted that he was the evil god. Why ask his age? Tae-san's gesture changed to a wicked state. He threatened the kid that most people deserve to reincarnate when they died. But he shouldn't, God would punish him. Tae-san had died once, so he had passed this stage. His face got closer to the kid, making him scared. Tae-san smiled sarcastically and said, "What's there to be afraid of? Because if anyone saw them, they would think that he was the evil god." Because looking at the kid, he was no different from a rookie. Tae-san continued to ask the kid how old he was and when he died. The kid shared that he was 18 years old and had only died a month ago. Tae-san was surprised by the kid's answer, and it was very clear that he was just a newbie. Tae-san was also very curious why he came here. Was it because he killed someone? The kid's face was sad, and he said he didn't do that, because he didn't dare to kill even an ant. The kid started to tell his story before he died. When he was a hacker at SSB, he hacked into the accounts of many people and then stole the list to hand over to the organization, causing them a lot of trouble. This made him accumulate a lot of evil karma while he was alive. Tae-san was also very surprised to hear this. But he thought that doing so would not be better than going to hell. The kid replied that not everyone could go to hell. He didn't remember exactly, but someone had said that when he died. This also made Tae-san puzzled. Tae-san still wondered why the kid died for this reason, which was also because of his stupidity when he secretly hacked into the president's account to play a little. But it was discovered in the president's account that it was President Putin's. The kid sneaked into the account and stole some of his information. Tae-san wondered about the amount of money the kid received after doing this deal. The number was up to $500 million. A number that made Tae-san sweat just by hearing it. Really, $500 million for an 18-year-old kid is very big. The kid said that the president had up to $200 billion in the black fund, so it wasn't much. But Tae-san was very curious why a hacker like him couldn't hide it and was caught. The truth was that the kid was betrayed by someone in the company. That person turned out to be sent by the company to spy. Tae-san continued to ask, with that much money, what could the kid do, and he also thought that there was no reason for him to kill someone like him. It turned out that the money disappeared because the kid invested in the gift fund. He sprayed all the money into the Canadian dollar fund, but before he could sell it, some bastards dumped it before he could react. So the kid only had $3 billion on paper and was thrown away. Tae-san's face was shocked. Although the kid had hacked into the system, the transaction was real-time, so he couldn't do anything else. At this time, Tae-san realized that he was the one who took the money that the kid sold his life to get. And a month ago, because he didn't have enough money, the kid continued to hack into the president's account again. As a result, he was killed. Tae-san asked him if he was good at programming. The kid immediately answered as proof of his ability. He liked to develop special algorithms and program them. He also decrypted the entire firewall of the important headquarters in Russia. Tae-san trusted the kid's ability and also wanted to help him with something. He asked if he had eaten anything, but how could he have anything to eat when he had no points left? Tae-san wondered why the other gods didn't help him. The kid replied that there was a place where the evil gods lived. But they never helped each other. At this time, the kid cried and begged, "Please give me some points." The kid hated this place because it was like hell. "If I have points, I will become a purer soul." Tae-san's face showed extreme confusion. He didn't understand what was going on anymore. Suddenly the voice of the system rang out, asking him if he wanted to exchange evil karma points for good karma points. The scene returned to the human world, the stock chart fluctuating constantly. A man wearing glasses that couldn't see his eyes was reporting on the morning trading session. The stock price of Anna Company plummeted, paper flying into his face. Along with that was an angry sentence, "I don't want to hear." The chairman of Anna Company cursed at the faces of everyone sitting in the meeting. He wanted everyone to find a solution to remedy the consequences of the company. But on the faces of everyone in the meeting, they all showed helplessness. He slammed the table angrily because he couldn't stand this mess. He asked Director Choi if he could ask for more support for Anna. Director Choi also said helplessly that the company had asked for too much support already, which made the supervisory board warn and complain about the late compensation fees. He asked Team Leader Lee about the financial situation of the company. Team Leader Lee said there was still $200 billion. The guy with glasses who couldn't see his eyes said there were still a lot of payments waiting, but they couldn't last a month like this. He vented his anger on the table again, cursing everyone as useless. Because the company's borrowing limit had reached the peak, they couldn't borrow from the bank. The public opinion was also bad, and the details of the debts of the company's financial department were also revealed. No one answered the phone from Ann & Company anymore. Someone in the meeting noticed something. The big companies were also on the verge of bankruptcy. If they didn't borrow from the bank anymore, the financial department and the academic institute would negotiate with the private bond issuer. It was obvious that it was very difficult to do that. There was something very strange about this. The guy started to understand the real problem. Foreign investors were withdrawing from the domestic stock market. But to this extent, it was too serious. Only the stocks of the companies belonging to the group were publicly sold. He still urged everyone to do everything to meet the bank director and withdraw all the money they could. Only tangible assets like gold and cash had value. He still encouraged everyone to just get through this, or do whatever it takes. Just this time. Suddenly he realized all the problems. He looked at Anna's chairman and thought about him. Since he got involved with him, bad things kept happening to the company. That's right, that was Tae-san, our main character. The scene went back to when Tae-san heard the system's voice, asking if he wanted to exchange the evil god's evil karma points for the good god's good karma points. Tae-san heard that, so he thought he could even change the fate of the real god. "Who are you?" Tae-san still continued to hesitate. At this time, the evil god kid was still crying and begging Tae-san because he really wanted to live as a god. Tae-san thought the price of not living virtuously was quite high, but then again, the evil karma was not the kid's fault. The kid's parents died early, he was raised in the cold Russian intelligence agency, and his living conditions caused his personality to have many problems. So, what was the kid's fault? The system continued to ask, "Do you want to exchange Tae-san?" Looking at the kid and not knowing what to say, Tae-san finally decided to exchange points for the kid. The system announced the process was taking place. A beam of light appeared in the room where the two were standing. The light blinded them both, and the light eyes shrank into the void. The misty smoke gradually appeared, and the two opened their eyes and looked around. Before their eyes was a completely different space, with green trees, grassy hills, and especially a very large house in front. Tae-san seemed very surprised by the villa in front of him. The kid looked cleaner and neater than before, and he also became a good god. Seeing the happy eyes of the kid, Tae-san thought that this kid was simpler than he thought. Even when Tae-san turned the kid into an angel, he still had quite a lot of points, and he considered it as an investment for him in terms of points. He earned it seemed like because every time an employee decided to quit, suddenly the kid asked Tae-san how to transfer the money he earned from this time. Then Tae-san stuttered, making the kid not understand much. The system announced that Tae-san had passed stage 3 and had leveled up and returned to the school where Tae-san was studying, still familiar with the daily scenery. He thought about the announcement. Clearly it was a game of regression leveling. What else was the halo of the protagonist, the feet stepping on the school grounds? The eyes still glued to someone, again the flowery words to describe the person. Exactly, it was still this domineering hunter. While everyone was looking, he was nagging the system in his head. There should be a point management page like other regression stories. He thought so, but opened his mouth and said again, "I don't know how he can find romance in college. But life is often not like a dream." The scene where he walked to the middle of the school grounds was like darkness engulfing. The surrounding was full of the smell of males, and the cowardly guy left to find another kind to do something unknown. Why did he go looking for room 302? He stood right in front of the door, and at the same time a figure of a girl appeared. She grabbed this can of water in his hand and said, "Thank you, I will drink it, you cowardly friend." Nata still didn't understand what was going on. He watched her drink his water very casually. She wiped her mouth with her hand after drinking and said, "It's perfect to recharge with caffeine." Tae-san's face was still grim, whether he knew it was because she took his can of water or for some other reason. She had black hair and a very beautiful body. She introduced herself as a fourth-year student of the school. She said that Tae-san was her savior, because when she almost fell, he appeared. From now on, he just trusted her, because she was a capable person. At this time, Tae-san was still like a fool because he didn't understand what the girl in front of him was saying. She continued to say that looking at the expressions of the people around, their faces were extremely jealous of Tae-san. The reason is because as long as he is under her, then Tae-san can live comfortably at school, don't worry about anything. And Tae-san thought she drank too much and got drunk. She asked what his name was. He replied, "My name is Yang Tae-san." She said his money was like a human being and she invited him to go elsewhere. The people around them still didn't understand what was going on. Because there was a fourth-year student here, someone started to gossip about why there was a fourth-year student attending the first-year class. Some said he must have failed the course and couldn't pass it and graduate. Some also noticed Tae-san when he came with Sun. He was also embarrassed when people kept mentioning him. The class started. The professor on the podium introduced himself and talked about the goal of this semester. This class would help everyone learn how to program proficiently. The professor with his hair parted in two asked everyone if that was too easy, right? Easy for him only, Professor. He continued to teach about the mess that only those who studied IT could understand. Because it was very difficult, he said it would be fine if someone quit. The male students heard that and didn't know if they understood, but their faces were also happy. As for the female students, it probably went in one ear and out the other. Just looking at their faces, they knew, why study programming when it was all algorithms, and there seemed to be even numerology in here. I don't know if I heard it wrong, but there was this thing that made me understand that IT could develop many things like games and web, and even the famous Apple line came from that. The professor also hoped to see the ability of someone, and he was very willing for that person to come to his research room. Sun heard this and was excited, because she was a fourth-year student. She understood right away. Suddenly the professor called her name, making her startled. He said that fourth-year students always had something different from first-year students, so everything had to be fair to everyone. She was confused by this, but reluctantly agreed with his opinion. But he thought she was close to the person sitting next to her, Tae-san, so he paired them up in a group. Tae-san was surprised. Why him? They looked at each other with blank eyes, knowing that from now until the end of the semester, they had to work together on the topic that the professor gave. Programming a mobile application. They were very panicked, not believing their ears. Did he repeat what he just heard in his head again? Are you sure it's inventing an app? It was definitely not a joke with him, he smiled smugly. The faces of the genius inventors of the app appeared in his head. He felt the interesting things ahead and wanted to try his strength once. Sun still wondered why he had to create an app. Looking at Tae-san's reaction, he felt a bit puzzled. Tae-san asked her if creating an app was that hard. He also boasted that he already had an iPhone, which surprised her. She didn't believe what he said because that thing hadn't been seen in Korea yet. But Tae-san owned it because he had a friend in Hong Kong who bought it as a gift. Anyway, the technology is still not waterproof. Tae-san asked if she could only develop any program. This made the Sun sweat with fear. She reluctantly answered that she could do it, but Tae-san was not satisfied with this answer. The reason is because Korea has not used the iPhone yet, so even if she makes an app, she has to send a request for permission from there first. Tae-san asked if she could just post it, but this was impossible. Because there is no program like that in the country yet. Sun felt this request was quite difficult for her. She asked him if he knew how popular the iPhone was in the business world. Tae-san chuckled at her question. She said it was better to use open-source Android. But it didn't run very stable, so it would make errors anyway. Tae-san felt the difference of year 4 was something very different. He told her that both of them had to give up on that. But it's not easy to give up because this is the subject for her to graduate. She has been held back at this school for too long, so she must pass this subject. She asked Tae-san how he planned this, because if he didn't pass the subject, he would have to stay like her. That can't be escaped. Hearing that, Tae-san turned pale, but he quickly calmed down. Because for him, this subject is not compulsory. Sun was surprised by Tae-san's words, because this is a compulsory subject for the IT department. He smiled and said that it was only for the IT department. Sun realized that he was not studying in this department. Tae-san also explained that he did not study in this department. She heard that and was even more shocked. Really, Tae-san is a freshman of Department 8 Law Department. Sun heard the two words Law Department, and a bunch of question marks appeared in her head. He invited her to drink coffee to ease the headache. And she still couldn't calm down after Tae-san's words outside the school grounds. The two of them were discussing with each other about blockchain technology. Sol also heard this word for the first time. It is a technique to prevent double spending by using the P2P network. These things are illegal to her. It is a technique to store payment transactions popular in the future. Hearing that, she was very surprised. Her major is network security, and after hearing Tae-san say, she felt like she knew nothing. He continued to say that people like her don't trust each other, and that's how the app networks used to control payment transactions. What he said made her unable to believe her ears. All of this was based on the truth, because it would be announced in the fall of this year. According to a source, Sun was stunned, because she didn't believe what she heard. The technique he mentioned was a consensus algorithm, a term of the IT department spoken by a law student. This was unbelievable. She was speechless, couldn't say anything. She wondered who Tae-san really was. Sun regained her composure and started to ask him why he exchanged information with her, because this was information that had not been announced. He said it because he knew by fate, she tried to research and develop, then she couldn't do it until she died. That was an irreplaceable reality, because to do this, one had to be a genius in mathematics and understand algorithms. Especially if she could do it now, Tae-san asked her. She heard that, felt embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Tae-san looked away, so he wasn't on the security network. Then she was like a white hat hacker. Tae-san intended to introduce her to a very cool security certificate. Did she want to try it? She replied that way, then it was no different from breaking the law. But for hackers, the most important thing wasn't to break the firewall. That was not normal for Sun, because she was afraid that her profile would be marked red, and her parents were just ordinary people and couldn't bear her fault. She just wanted to live a peaceful life, and couldn't do illegal things. She also insisted that she had to get married. Surprisingly, Tae-san offered to take full responsibility for her life. Like this, it was no different from flirting with her. Her mouth was so surprised that she couldn't close it. Again, in that situation, anyone who heard it would be mentally confused. Sun was always cool, but she stood in front of a man like this, also had to fall in love. Tae-san took the car and asked her, she didn't ride the car, right? I thought the person he was asking was Sun, but no, it was Yuji, who was already sitting on Tae-san's car. She replied to Tae-san that today she wanted to go home by taxi. Just now, it was a sister of the IT department, and now, it was a sister from the art department. Did he have too much fire? Yuji was blaming Tae-san, because during this time, he couldn't make an appointment with him. And luckily, he hadn't received any more evil karma points from these actions. If he made a girl resentful to the point of frost falling in May, he would surely get a pile of karma. So, he had to be careful about these actions. At a castle with very ancient architecture, they used torches to light up this place. This was where the meeting of a group of people who called themselves the Night Team. A person wearing a black coat with a red cross on the front was summoning everyone to sit together. They all wore black cloaks that covered their heads and did not reveal their faces. There were 10 people sitting on a round table, and it seemed like they were in a castle. One of them spoke, saying that it took 10 years to be here. He said that only evil cults that did evil things would have such an interface, and all 10 of them said in unison. They prayed that all the believers would always be with them. It had been 486 years since they were humiliated and robbed of that island, and in 1912 the island was reclaimed from the Taoists. But the shame still flowed in their blood vessels, and they were not allowed to forget that past. The hatred would seep into their blood and would never fade away. The meeting began and a person named Juten was invited to speak. He said that he had recently discovered some very unusual movements in the East. The Heaven and Earth Society and the snake worshippers seemed to be busy looking for something that none of them knew. He did not know what that thing was, because it was a secret operation and he could not find out everything. But according to the information he received, maybe they were looking for someone, and that person might be the heir in the legend of a clan that covered 3 countries, China, Korea, and Japan. That person was known as the descendant of destruction. These events made everything in the world start to become lively. The church that self-proclaimed itself as the Knights, always set the first goal as to destroy the guardians of the messenger. The people in black shouted to express their loyalty to the church. One of them said that over time, they had gathered the servants of the Holy Grail into an alliance to protect the sincerity of the followers of God and the children of the descendants of the abandoned. There was an economic war, and they had to break the alliance of these people. He continued, saying that first, they had to join hands with the Heaven and Earth Society as in the past and use marriage or the promise of alliance. He looked at the others in the meeting and asked for their opinions. They all agreed with him and decided to speed up the plan. He continued, saying that he would let his eldest son marry the daughter of the leader of the Heaven and Earth Society. The economic market was quite bleak and plummeted. It was Tayson's opportunity. He looked at the computer screen and felt that these numbers were jumping constantly like an end-of-season festival. He saw the charts, like the virtual money bubbles that changed the whole world. He felt excited, and especially on the 16th, the BIOS investment bank would declare bankruptcy and merge into a hedge fund. Then it would be $2 a week. He thought, and then, he would order the whole world, including Wall Street, to collapse everything. The losers would also follow him. He thought that he needed to be colder, because they were just numbers on the screen that people could not touch. As he clicked the mouse, he thought that the amount of capital that no individual could buy was being transferred in his palm. While everyone was busy trying to get out of this situation, that was when the cold and decisive people would win. He knew that the black fund hidden from taxes was $32 trillion. He felt that he was too small compared to them. Currently, he was just a bucket of water in a water tank. He wanted more than that. He got up from his chair. He could not trust anyone and had to be alert to everyone. Looking at the city, he knew that the enemy would appear at any time to sink the stock market exchange rate, that humanity was being manipulated by an invisible hand. He did not know who this invisible hand was, transferring a huge amount of money that could not be grasped. On the desk, a cup of tea with a strong aroma. His secretary came over and asked why he took a day off from school. He replied that he had moved all the classes to Monday and Wednesday. The secretary admired him, because when she was in college, she was always dizzy looking for a job. He teased her, asking if she felt unfair now. She shyly said no. Suddenly, the secretary asked if he had fun dating. He smiled and did not know how to answer. Seeing his eyes like that, the secretary thought that he was hiding something. She said that a handsome guy like him, how could the girls keep quiet? She explained to him that the boys always misunderstood themselves as roosters, but in fact, if they got a girlfriend, it meant that the girl had agreed beforehand. She hinted to him that it meant that women would be more active. He noticed the hint from her but just smiled. He asked about her working environment here. She happily said that it was very good. At this time, she suddenly received a phone call from Director Huang. Director Huang asked him about tomorrow, if he was free. He reported to him that the interview date for the candidate that he had mentioned before had been set to take place tomorrow. He just remembered this. He shouted happily because everything went so smoothly, making the secretary look at him helplessly. At Yuji's villa, the phone was still off. She kept holding it, waiting for someone, but still no one contacted. At this time, her mother teased her that the phone looked almost pierced. Was she waiting for her boyfriend to call or not? She lay down thinking, because clearly it was not her boyfriend. Suddenly, she asked her mother if she really had talent for painting or not. Her mother was very surprised to hear that question, because she was among the top of the art department of Korea University. Then, she comforted her that the paintings she hung in the room were very great. If they were exhibited in the gallery, they could also sell for a very high price. She explained that it was not her who painted them, but someone else gave them to her. She surprised her mother, asking if it was from the professor or not. She denied it because the professor at her school did not have that much ability. Hearing that, her mother was even more curious. She looked at her phone and told her mother that there was a boy like that. At this time, a car stopped in front of the company office. The staff bowed respectfully, because the director had arrived. Tae-san got out of the car in a cool way. Everyone bowed to him. He smiled confidently and entered the elevator. Suddenly, the elevator door opened. The candidates were interviewing the whole room, making him feel too crowded. Two friends were talking about their makeup class today. Others were talking about their sleep, not sleeping because of worry. Tae-san felt like this was a bunch of goblins in a chaotic forest and there was no order. Suddenly, someone called Kangwell's name, making Cho startled and turned around. A young girl with cute black hair was answering the call. He knew this was the female lead in the Goblin TV drama, but why was she here? And a boy with red hair, that was Jun of Miza Boy. Looking at the scene in front of him, he did not know how to deal with this situation. Suddenly, someone behind him asked him, "Did you come here for an interview?" A boy dressed in a cool way. He turned to answer him. He asked, "Why are you standing stupidly here and not getting a ticket?" He frowned, not knowing how to answer. He continued to ask, "Are you a singer or an actor?" "You are so handsome." He said that he was Ray Hyu, and he would be an idol in the future. He knew for sure that this was a stage name. He said his real name was Morong Jun. They chatted happily with each other. At this time, the crowd was still very lively. Suddenly, the girls here looked at Tae-san with a longing face because of his handsome appearance. Everyone wondered if he was an idol or an actor, because he was very outstanding among the crowd. He smiled friendly and looked at everyone. The girls here were constantly ovulating because of his handsome appearance, with skin smoother than girls. The atmosphere was still very lively because of the enthusiasm of the candidates. He thought that today was definitely an interesting day for himself. The entertainment company MTS at this time, the room numbered 501, Tae-san entered. The room looked luxurious, knowing that it cost a lot of money. Around the room there was not a speck of dust. Just looking at it, you knew this was the room of the director of the entertainment company. The head of the department Huang had been waiting for him to enter to greet him. The two smiled and greeted each other. Tae-san asked the head of the department Huang, "Are all the people selected here already?" He replied, "That's right. All the people you approved from the official staff of the departments such as human resources, operations, advertising, all are 80 people. Tae-san explained the mechanisms in the company. At MTS there will be no abuse of power. Even if they are artists under the company, there will be no special treatment. Mr. Huang, just remember this," he replied to Tae-san respectfully, saying, "Don't worry, everyone in the company won't burn the director's order." Tae-san also told Mr. Huang that there will be a lot of investors ready to invest heavily in this field soon. This surprised Mr. Huang. He continued, "The investors will fully support us, so our job now is to improve the company's capabilities, and to lead in this cultural industry. We have to grasp and meet the needs of consumers thoroughly." He asked Mr. Huang if he had contacted the lecturers yet. Mr. Huang said he had contacted the native English and Chinese teachers on Lunar New Year. This made Mr. Huang very curious. Why did Tae-san think like that? For the kids at this age, is it okay to push them all like that? Tae-san smiled and remembered a saying in the scriptures, "The reason God gives people wealth is not for them to monopolize it. On the contrary, God wants to create a balance of benefits for those who do not have that wealth." Hearing this, Mr. Huang was really impressed. He, regardless of age, at this time, had no meaning at all. The system notified Tae-san that he had received a karma point. It was no different from a virtual reality game. Perhaps when he received sincere respect from others, he would get more karma points. Suddenly there was a loud voice outside the door saying, "Yeseo can't be like this." The two people standing inside were also surprised by this. The girl standing outside the door said, the representative had an appointment with her because he was in a hurry, so she was like this. "Please let her see Mr. Huang for a while, please help her." The two people in the room didn't know what was going on. Tae-san asked Mr. Huang, "What's wrong?" Mr. Huang said, "The person outside is a new actress under lower company. But it seems that she has been a bit tired lately. When she was a trainee, Mr. Huang trained her. Her name is Kang Yeseo." Tae-san was very surprised to hear Mr. Huang say that. Outside, Yeseo's voice still echoed. And Tae-san was surprised by the name Kang Yeseo because he was actually her fan. Tae-san said to Mr. Huang, "Let her in." But Mr. Huang firmly refused, because they had been warned not to contact anyone from Luna Company. If they got involved with the actress in the company, both sides would be in big trouble. Tae-san asked Mr. Huang again, "Are you afraid of that?" Mr. Huang reassured me, "Don't be afraid, I have a bodyguard. And I also have a relationship with the law firm Samworld, so don't worry too much." Hearing that, but Mr. Huang was still worried for Tae-san, the door opened, the girl walked into the room of the two. It was Yeseo with brown hair. She ran over, crying, and hugged Tae-san tightly. That action made Tae-san panic and scared, because suddenly there was a girl crying in his arms. The three indescribable faces of Tae-san because he suddenly got hugged by a girl who was also the person he admired very much. He couldn't control his emotions, his saliva dripped everywhere, and Manager Huang stood behind Trin Trong Jiao. He introduced her as Yeseo, and she jerked back and let go. She was startled because the person she just hugged was not Manager Huang. He chuckled and asked her if she had been crying. Yeseo looked scared and stammered. He asked who she was, but in her mind, Tae-san was a pervert. Manager Huang introduced Yeseo to Tae-san, the CEO of the company. The room returned to its original quietness. Yeseo was sobbing and begging Manager Huang for help, because besides him, she didn't know who else to rely on. Manager Huang told Yeseo to feel free to talk to the director, because Tae-san was like his family. Even though Tae-san seemed uncomfortable with this, he politely told Yeseo to speak up, because he could only help her if he heard her. She cried and said that it was about the representative of the company, and that tomorrow she would have a schedule to fly to Bali to take photos for the magazine cover. Manager Huang still didn't understand what was going on, and she continued to say that there would be no manager on that trip. Both Tae-san and Manager Huang were very surprised by this, because she didn't want to go and had refused. But the manager threatened her that while he was still talking nicely, she should go, because there was someone who promised to sponsor her. She cried bitterly because she knew that if she went against him, she would be buried alive. Now, she didn't know what to do. Tae-san thought about how serious this was, that she had to rush to find Manager Huang like that. In the entertainment industry, everyone wanted to be famous, but only those who got into it knew how horrible it was. Tae-san asked her what she planned to do about this. Did she really want to get out of that lunar company? Yeseo was like a statue, but tears still kept falling. Manager Huang was also in a daze and didn't understand anything. The silence didn't last long when Yeseo answered Tae-san that she really wanted to escape from there. She begged him to save her, and Tae-san agreed to her request. Yeseo said that she really trusted him, because he was her fan and he also knew that her parents were in the US. Tae-san asked her if the company had bought a house for Yeseo yet. She sadly shared that she was still living in the company dormitory, so her luggage could be brought by the staff. Tae-san took out his phone to call someone, and the other end of the line was Manager Han. Tae-san told Manager Han that he wanted him to use MTS bodyguards to protect someone, because the target was female. So Tae-san said to send 2 men and 2 women. The phone call ended. He continued to ask Yeseo if she had brought things like documents or evidence with her. Fortunately, Yeseo had a recording file on her phone. He continued to take out his phone and call another person, the lawyer Kang on the other end. He asked him to help him with a lawsuit. The content of the lawsuit was to terminate the exclusive contract of the actress who was threatened by the director. Lawyer Kang immediately prepared the most suitable lawyer for this case. He told Lawyer Kong, "Send another discreet lawyer to me. I'm at MTS Company," and he turned to ask Mr. Han, "Is security here very good?" Mr. Han replied, "Of course, because there are 8 security guards here." He turned politely, and said to Yeseo, "You see, this is a very safe place." Yeseo was still stiff as a statue because she was too surprised by what she had just heard. Tae-san told her, "Stay in the company dormitory for a while, because outside the police, this is the safest place now." He smiled a smile like an angel descending. "Her contract termination will be handled perfectly." Yeseo was almost speechless when she heard that. She stood up, bowed and thanked Tae-san for what he had done. The system notified that he had received a karma point outside the hall. People were still buzzing. A girl was walking in front. Kang Melial was walking leisurely and looking at everything around. In her head, she remembered the handsome face of Tae-san as if he was a trainee at the company. In the corridor, a pair of legs was still moving forward. Kangwell felt that she was nothing compared to the people who applied. Suddenly, at this time, there was a voice calling her name that made her turn around. The assistant of the planning department of the company called her and introduced himself. He said that the director wanted to see her and invited her to spare some of her time. She was very surprised why the director knew her and looked at the face of the assistant of the planning department like a pervert, making her scared. The head of the planning department comforted her. Her friend was interviewing her, so she didn't have to worry. But the more he said that, the more worried she became. They quickly went together to the director's office. At this time, an assistant brought Kang Well to Tae-san's face. She bowed to Tae-san and introduced herself as Kang Well. Suddenly, she was shocked and stared when she saw the person in front of her. Tae-san asked her if she had any intention of becoming a celebrity. She sweated profusely, knowing that this girl would participate in a super famous movie in 9 years. She was the bride of a fairy, and had an exclusive contract with an amount of 100 million. He was also a fan of hers in his previous life. At this time, he was eating chocolate with the hacker kid that he had given to the two of them to chat with each other. The kid cared about Tae-san's health when he saw Tae-san's face flushed like he was drunk. He denied it and shouted that he was not drunk. He told about his interview today, making the kid feel he was cool. The kid sighed that he had a rich brother. Tae-san asked the kid, "Do you like Tae-san's career points more than money, right?" The kid patted his shoulder and said that money is what makes more career points. Actually, Tae-san wanted to ask the kid something important today. Tae-san asked, "Are you one of the geniuses who can hack any computer, right?" He saw that the shop had many talents from the intelligence agency, not to be underestimated. Even if he was a boy with a natural talent for hacking, he couldn't understand what he was saying. It turned out that the kid didn't want to share with him about these things, because it was a professional secret. He said that if Tae-san wanted to learn, he had to spend a lot of time. But at this time Tae-san had a lot of time. The kid told Tae-san that he had a dream since he was little that surprised Tae-san. The kid said that because of that dream, he hacked Putin's account. Tae-san was curious about what his dream was. Tae-san said that if the boy told him, he would give the boy more career points or level up. The boy sadly said that he wanted to go to an amusement park, making him panic. At this time he turned into a plaster statue. The kid continued, he wanted to go to the largest and most beautiful amusement park in Russia, where he used to live. That was his only dream. Tae-san also knew about his living there, and his greatest joy when he was alive was the family vacations at the amusement park. He knew that the boy wanted to share that happiness with the children in Russia. Maybe the boy was better than he thought. In the evening at Tae-san's private house, the computer screen was always on. He was looking for a mathematician who was good at algorithms to help the kid. Because the kid only knew about the computer field, but not about algorithms. He felt that since he learned hacking, the network security nowadays was very loose. To get stronger, he had to learn more. He felt that the kid was a genius when he found the weakness of the network system that happened in the future. Maybe in the next 10 years, the computers in the world will be in your palm. You feel that as long as you are determined, it will not be a problem. You have an excess of that determination. In the morning at Korea University, a girl walked on the street with blue high heels. Her hair was tied in a ponytail, and everyone whispered about this girl. They didn't know who she was, because she looked more outstanding than everyone else. They didn't know if she was a student from another school who transferred, because they saw her for the first time. People kept whispering, praising her beauty and appearance. She had an appointment with someone in front of the parking lot, but she still didn't see him appear. Behind her, they wondered if she was sane or not. The boys at this time saw a girl and their eyes brightened. They pushed each other to greet her. Hearing the whispers about herself, she felt very lonely. The people around her were like flies, annoying. She still walked steadily on her high heels. The boys who talked about her suddenly shouted why she didn't greet them when they were her seniors. Did she look down on them? They followed her and called her a brat and a witch. She was angry, clenched her teeth, but said nothing. Suddenly, a figure came from behind, grabbed the heads of the two guys and made them apologize to her. They were terrified of the person who just appeared. She looked behind and found out that it was Yang Tae-san. He was frowning at the people in front of him. He smiled at her. He introduced himself as Seol's boyfriend. She was shocked and stared at him when he introduced himself like that. His cars, she asked him if he was the son of some tycoon. He explained that there were many ways to make a living without relying on family. She was very surprised when he invited her to his supercar. She was shy and exclaimed that the car was too beautiful. He smiled at her and said that if she needed one, he would give her his car. He startled her very much. He told her that he had promised to take responsibility for her life, making her panic. He didn't know if he intended to marry her or not. He looked at her with a determined look. He asked her if she wanted to marry him. She was shocked by what he said. He teased her that she had said that they would date first, making her stunned. She was embarrassed and said that she did say that he would be her boyfriend, but how he intended to take responsibility. She asked him if he wanted to hire her as a lifetime employee, but he was just a student. Even so, he smiled and said in a curious tone why she knew. Suddenly at this time, he called her name, making her very shy and blush. He asked her if she wanted to dream a very hot dream with him. She didn't know how many times. She was stunned again. The car stopped, and everyone looked at the luxury car parked there. Two people quickly got out of the car. As he walked on the street, he said that he was her boyfriend. This made her very shocked, thinking that he was a bad guy. Even so, she was still very moved. She quickly wanted to calm herself down. At this moment, looking at her, he smiled and said that he had a gift for her. He kept surprising her from one surprise to another. He said that the gift was the fastest and strongest computer in the world. He wanted to tease her by hitting her weak spot. She studied information technology because she wanted to create the strongest supercomputer in the world by herself. But now he suddenly said that he gave it to her, which made her amazed. Looking at her reaction, he smiled happily. The sun was still shining in the sky, and the fans were still flying around the entertainment company building. A man was talking on the phone, apologizing for not being able to solve the problem. The executive director was very angry, blaming the manager for not doing anything. But the manager kept asking for another chance. The manager said that he would send the hottest person recently to him. The executive director said that it would be fine if it was Aram. The manager asked if the girl was beautiful, and the manager replied that he would choose a polite receptionist. The manager said that he would let her fly with the director tonight. The director quickly agreed, and told him to do it properly. In the office, the executive director became very angry because his plan was ruined. He turned to ask Director Choi, where was that cunning girl, and had he found her yet? Director Choi answered that he had found her. He continued to ask, where was she? Director Choi, as if he had something hard to say, made him very annoyed, and asked, where is she? Director Choi reported that she was with the sales director of the entertainment company MTS. After she arrived at Hwang's company, her whereabouts were unknown. He was furious, and asked, did that dog drink the wrong medicine? How dare he mess with him? He shouted angrily, catch that girl and bring her back here. If Hwang gets in the way, drag him back too. He angrily slammed the table because someone dared to knock over his rice bowl. He thought of Hwang with a hateful look and vowed to kill him. At this time, in Taeson's company, he was chatting with Robert about investing all the funds in the election through the subsidiaries he had acquired. He attracted more operators. Robert was amazed, saying that the amount of money in there was too large. Taeson smiled and said that they would have to invest more in it. There was nothing to worry about, so he just invested a limit of $5 billion for now. Until Robert was scared by the huge amount of money, Taeson knew that his $5 billion could sweep a whole election in the US before developing SNS. The effect of the previous advertising and speech was very great. Robert praised him very decisively. He quickly said, don't let this leak out and let the Communist Party continue to pump money for them, in a way that he liked. He smiled, thinking that after 8 years, the world election would change again. The reason was that the politicians in the US also craved power. Looking at the blue sky, he knew that everyone was greedy for money. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door that startled him. He quickly turned around, happily invited the person outside in. Young Seo came in and sat on the chair, talking to him. But at this moment, she didn't know what to say. Because she didn't think that she was really the chairman of the company. According to her team leader, he was still a student. If he was a descendant of a wealthy family, then it would make sense. Seeing her silent like that, he had to speak first, and asked her if there was anything inconvenient. She embarrassedly said that she was fine. He comforted her. Next time, feel comfortable like at home. But at this moment, what she cared about was that his skin was too beautiful. She wondered what cosmetics he used, and his body was too perfect. She was embarrassed to say it to him, but didn't say it. He urged her, and she asked, are you really the director here? Because she heard Seiya say that he was still a student. He smiled, introduced himself as a law student at Korea University. She smiled along with his words, but suddenly she panicked when she realized that he studied law at Korea University, which was too terrifying. He introduced himself further, both as the chairman and the largest shareholder of MTS, which made her very impressed. She asked him how old he was. He said that he was 20 years old. She panicked again when she heard his real age. He smiled and asked her if there was anything wrong with his age that made her panic. She denied that there was nothing. She was wondering how he could do that at only 20 years old. She didn't think that a human being could do such things. He could only be an alien. Suddenly, he asked her if she had a US passport. She said that actually, she was a US citizen. He smiled and said that he was going to the US soon and asked her if she wanted to go with him. Suddenly, at this moment, she was moved to tears. He asked her if she remembered her parents and wanted to go back to visit them. She cried continuously and said nothing. He comforted her and said that from now on, only good things would happen to her when she came with him. She sobbed and shivered on his shoulder. He continued to ask her where she would go if she could cancel the contract over there. She had never thought of canceling the contract, but after this, she was determined to devote herself to her MTS. He smiled and said that she should keep her word. She still couldn't believe that she would get the first round so easily. He promised to make her a star not only in Korea but also in the whole of Asia. At this point, she suddenly stood up and said to wait for her for a moment, because her phone was ringing. He smiled and said that she could answer the phone comfortably. On the other end of the line, someone called her name and burst into tears. She suddenly screamed, "What happened? Why was it like that?" At this point, her tears fell like rain. Suddenly, a man's voice rang out, saying, "Show yourself." She was shocked, not knowing who he was or if he was real. The director asked, "Did you forget his voice already? Or what?" If you forgot, he would introduce himself again. He was Director Choi. She panicked when she heard this name, and she asked, "Why did you take her phone?" I sat on one side, listening to the conversation of the two, making Cho Taeson's face darken. He said that he knew she was hiding at Hwang's place, but she screamed, saying that her business had nothing to do with this. And why did he do that to her friend? Please let her go. He said that when he was still talking politely, she should hurry back to the company to ensure the safety of her friend. Taesan stepped forward and took her phone. He listened to the phone and greeted the person on the other end of the line. He didn't know who Taesan was, just guessed that he was Hwang. Hearing the conversation of the two made her astonished. He said to the other end of the line that he was not Hwang. The other end of the line shouted, asking who this bastard was. Taesan smiled and said that he was the one chosen to defeat the madman. Just wait. At this point, at the company, security announced an emergency situation. All the employees panicked and didn't know what was going on. The manager said that the boss had ordered, everyone had to be unanimous. He had received the order. Manager Han said to start the emergency communication system and gather everyone. Warning, this was a level 1 alarm. Everyone had only one word. They quickly rushed out the door urgently, not knowing if this was a war or not. His manager said that he didn't know who they were, but if they dared to touch the boss, they would all die. He ordered everyone to complete the mission seriously. At the law office, they were also preparing the documents. Lawyer Kang warned all the staff not to be careless in this action. Because this time, it was the person who had saved his life, so he was very grateful to him. The whole office cheered in response. Lawyer Kang said that they shouldn't be afraid of things like fists without eyes. If they wanted to stay by his side, they had to endure those things. Everyone smiled and said that they were former prosecutors of the criminal department, so those things were nothing to them. The time had come to depart. Everyone quickly went to the meeting place. At the entertainment company, Director Choi reported to the executive director that everyone was on their way. The executive director wondered why they were so rushed just because of an American rabbit. Director Choi said that it was because they were holding his aunt, so he couldn't escape. The executive director was satisfied with his work. He said that this time, they had to teach the girl a serious lesson. He always thought of Yeseo with her hot body. Director Choi asked the executive director how he wanted to teach her. He said that sending her to Wangfield for a month would do. That way, she would obediently listen. He smoked and said that it was time to warn those people. He said that there would be no change in the future, the world still belonged to him. Director Choi agreed and said that if it was before, they would have been taught with a wooden stick. Suddenly, the phone in the office rang. The staff reported to him that something big had happened. He was very surprised to hear that the police had also arrived. The staff said that they were being attacked, which made him angry and panicked. The staff reported that there were about 10 members of some organization, wearing black vests, surrounding the building. He panicked and said to be more specific. The staff reported that Yeseo was also in the group. They had some people coming out of the elevator. He shouted and ordered them to stop at all costs. At this moment, the door of the room was knocked. He and the director turned their faces to the door in horror. He asked Director Choi to contact Wangfield immediately. At this time, the door was slowly opened, and a large group of people from Taesan entered, standing in front of him, making him tremble. Director Hwang smiled friendly and greeted him as if they had not seen each other for a long time. He looked at him angrily and roared, "Huang, you are a bastard." He explained that he was not a bastard, but the director of MTS Entertainment. He shouted at him to shut up, saying that a filthy dog like him was not a director of anything. At this time, he asked the lawyer behind him if he was insulting and defaming him. The lawyer quickly said yes, and the lawyer also recorded what he had just said. He roared and asked, "Who are you to come here and ruin my business?" He called Director Choi, "Call the police quickly." At this time, a pair of feet entered the room and said, "Ruin your business? Do you know what you are talking about, Director Lee?" He screamed at the lawyer, "What do you want?" The lawyer asked him, "Why did you kidnap me?" He did not react, only screamed, "No, I did not kidnap. What is this lunatic talking about?" The lawyer smiled and repeated what he had said. The lawyer quickly introduced himself as Chouette, the executive director of Salmon Law Firm. Hearing the introduction, the two turned pale and sweated, because this law firm was very big. The lawyer said that a few years ago, he had defended him, meaning himself, which surprised him. The lawyer continued, he had to have professional ethics, so he did not want to reveal the information of the client. But did he not have a conscience for his whole life, or was he a heartless person? The lawyer sarcastically said, he was a bit older than the director, so if he had any empty words, please forgive him, because he was a former prosecutor and had a habit of swearing when he saw a criminal. At this time, Tae-sen felt that he had hired the right person. His lawyer was really awesome. Yeseo asked him about the location of her aunt. Her appearance shocked everyone in the room. The lawyer said that kidnapping was a very serious crime, and he had to go to jail for about 5 years. The lawyer ordered the police and reporters immediately. Director Choi denied the situation, saying that he did not kidnap Yeseo. Yeseo confirmed that they were the ones who kidnapped her to force her to return to the company. Director Choi said that he just wanted to invite her to discuss the future, but hearing the conflict and the current situation made him sweat. The lawyer quickly called the police, because he was also busy and had to deal with it quickly to go to a class reunion. At that moment, the executive director suddenly looked at Tae-san, because he thought he was easy to bully. He showed fear and said, "What do you have to stare at the criminal for? You look like such a pushover." A bunch of scoundrels, hearing him curse, made Cho and the other person angry, but they didn't dare to say anything. Tae-san asked him, if he was waiting for the thugs to come and save him, then he should call them all. Then, he would show them that the director of the entertainment company was a scumbag, who kidnapped and detained illegally, and even hired the underworld. He was furious, pale, but didn't know how to react. Tae-san looked at Director Choi, and asked if he understood him. Suddenly, he was marked absent without going to school, which made Cho and Director Choi panic. Tae-san continued to introduce himself as the chairman of MIS and also the person related to this matter. Tae-san continued to say that the contractual relationship had to be based on trust and affection, which were nonsense. Director Lee asked what Tae-san had to do with this. Tae-san smiled wickedly and continued to say, Director Choi was too much. He kidnapped and pretended to plan to bribe the sponsor for the actress. He would be the one to help actress Yeseo instead of the management company. He was angry, slammed the table and shouted to shut up. Tae-san didn't care about him. He told Han to go find Yeseo's aunt. He also told Yeseo to go see where her aunt is. Yeseo understood his intention, so she also quietly followed Han. Director Lee shouted, "Where are you going?" making Yeseo startled. Tae-san started to glare at him. He threatened Yeseo that if she left, her acting career would be over. A loud bang like a bazooka sound made the table break in half, along with the curse of the damn bastard, smoke flying everywhere in the room. Tae-san was the owner of the reckless action just now. He lowered his voice, told Yeseo not to worry, and went to find her aunt. The two directors Choi and Lee were almost stunned when they saw the scene just now. He looked at the two directors Lee with eyes sharp as knives, cursed him as a bastard and told him not to mess around anymore. "Sit down, if you don't want to go to hell right now." Tae-san was really cool, guys. Director Lee was helpless, didn't dare to react like before, just cursed Tae-san in his mouth as a bastard. Tae-san continued to speak loudly, his plan was completely over. The bastard also knew his secret account for bribing. Director Lee still liked to act tough, he asked him who the hell he was to face him. Tae-san, named Choi again, told him to immediately bring out ECO's contract. The other two were stunned. Once again, Lawyer Kong continued Tae-san's words. He said that the two of them smelled really bad. He had sent his juniors to start searching and confiscating evidence. He also did not forget to remind them that he was the director of Samu law firm. The two of them were now scared and pale, and did not dare to say anything. Outside, Yeseo had found her aunt. She was fine, though a little scared, and was lucky to not lose any skin. Director Lee bit his lip, suppressing his anger. He asked Director Choi to bring out the contract and announce it on the system, saying that he had received 12 more points of business like this time.